are still among the living, but I who write shall have long since gone my way into the region of shadows. For indeed, strange things shall happen, secret things be known. Many centuries shall pass ere these memorials be seen of men, and when seen, there will be some to disbelieve, some to doubt, and yet a few who will find much to ponder upon the characters graven here in stylus of iron. Edgar Allan Poe is dead. And Rufus Griswold wrote in this regard that I died the day before yesterday in Baltimore, that this announcement will startle many, but few will be grieved by it, that in my death, literary art has lost one of its most brilliant, but erratic stars. Fill with mingled cream and amber, I will drain that glass again. Such hilarious visions clamor through the chambers of my brain. Queerest thoughts, quaintest fancies come to life and fade away. What care I how time advances? I am drinking ale today. As far back as I can trace my immediate progenitors, they are Irish. According to the rules of British descent, I am the oldest of the head of all the Poes in America, well, descendants of John Poe. The name John Poe about a century ago was a name of much note in the financial history of Ireland. He was from an ancient and noble family, and he married a daughter of the British Admiral McBride, himself of a very illustrious descent. He came to America in the 4th year of his marriage with 2 children, David, my grandfather, and George, and settled in Nottingham County, Pennsylvania, where he sired 8 more children. My father, David Poe Jr., was the son of David Poe Sr. David Poe Jr. and his wife, my mother, Elizabeth, were both actors. On a trip to visit friends in Richmond, Virginia, violent illness carried both off within a week of each other. I was then about a year old, and my sister Rosalie was an infant. And speaking of my mother, I have touched upon a string to which my heart fully responds. I myself never knew her, never knew the affection of a father. I may have frequent occasional dealings with adversity, but the want of paternal affection has been the heaviest of my trials. A wealthy gentleman of Virginia, Scottish descent, took a fancy to me, and having no children of his own, adopted me. I lived with Mr. Allan until my 17th year, when he inherited from an uncle a sum of some $30,000 per year. This vast income of wealth nearly turned my brain. It turned his brain, and worse, confirmed in him habits of habitual drunkenness. His frequent paroxysms of this, he treated me with what I considered an indignity. Accordingly, I left his house. Richmond, Monday, March 19th, 1827. Sir, after my treatment on yesterday and what has passed between us this morning, I should hardly think that you will be surprised by the contents of this letter. My determination is taken at thus to leave your house, to find in this wide world some place where I will be treated not as you have treated me. This is not a hurried determination, but one on which I have long considered, and having so considered, my resolution is unalterable. You may perhaps think that I have flown off on a passion and am already wishing to return, but not so. I will give you the reasons that have actuated me, and then judge. Since I have been able to think upon any subject, I have aspired to, and have been taught by you to aspire to eminence in public life. This cannot be done without a good education, such as one as cannot be had at primary school. A collegiate education, therefore, was what I most ardently desired, and what I had been led to believe by you would at some future time be granted. But in a moment of caprice, you have blasted my hope, because forsooth I disagreed with you in an opinion, which opinion I was forced to express. Again, I have heard you say, and you little thought I was listening, therefore you must have said it in earnest, that you had no affection for me. Yet you suffer me to be subjected to the whims and caprices, not only of your white family, but to the complete authority of the blacks. These grievances I cannot submit to, and I am gone. I request that you will send my trunk with my books and my clothes, and that you will give me as much money as will defray my passage to some of the northern cities, and enough that will allow me to support myself for 1 month, until I may be enabled to engage in some business that will allow me to support myself, and then to lay aside a sum that will one day or another support me at university. Send my trunk, etc., to the courthouse tavern. Send me, I entreat you, some money immediately, as I am in the greatest necessity. If you fail to comply with my request, I tremble at the consequence. Yours, etc., Edgar A. Poe. Did I, when an infant, solicit his charity or support? Or was it of his own free will that he offered my protection? He may urge that he has given me a liberal education, but I leave that to those who know how far liberal educations can be had in 8 months' time. Richmond, Tuesday, March 20th, 1827. Dear Sir, be so good as to send me my trunk with my clothes. I wrote to you on yesterday explaining my reasons for leaving. Suppose since I did not receive my trunk or an answer to my letter that you did not receive it. I'm in the greatest necessity, having tasted food since yesterday morning. Nowhere to sleep at night, but roam about the streets, nearly exhausted. I beseech you, if you wish not your prediction concerning me, to lend, if you will not give me, as much money as will defray my cost of passage to Boston. That is $12. Sail on Saturday. The letter will be received by me at the Courthouse Tavern, where be so good as to send me my trunk with my things. Give my love to all at home. I am yours, etc. Edgar Allan Poe. After 2 years' conduct, during which no fault could be found in the army, as a common soldier, I returned, upon hearing of the extreme illness of his wife, whom I had always regarded as a mother. I arrived the night after her funeral. If she had not died while I was away, I would have nothing to regret. His love I never valued, but she, I felt, loved me as her own child. I again left the protection of Mr. Allan, who now gave loose to the baseness of all his cave character. He, a short time later, married a second wife, had 1 or 2 children, and then died, of course, without leaving me anything. I was then at West Point, where I had obtained on my own volition a cadet's appointment, but would have to resign. It had been more than 2 years since John Allan had spoken with me, and almost 3 since he had assisted me. When I think upon the long 21 years that I had called him father and he had called me son, I could cry like a child to think that it should all end in this. In my childhood, I have not been as others were, not seen as others saw. I could not bring my passions from a common spring. The same source, I have not taken my sorrow, not awakened my heart to joy at the same tone, and all I loved alone. Then, in my childhood, in the dawn of a most stormy life, was drawn from every breath of good and ill, the mystery that binds me still, from the torrent of the fountain, from the red cliff of the mountain, from the sun that around me rolled in its autumn tint of gold, from the lightning in the sky as it passed me flying by, to the thunder and the storm and the clouds that took the form when all the rest of heaven was blue. The demon in my view. It's true. I'm nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. I am, have been. But why would you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not dulled, not destroyed them. Above all was my sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in heaven and on earth. I even heard some things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how calmly, how steadily I can tell you the whole story. It's impossible to say when first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none. Passion there was none. I loved the old man. Never wronged me, never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. The old man had the eye of a vulture. It was a pale blue with a hideous veil over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cool, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. I know nothing. You should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. Each night, just at midnight, I'd turn the latch of his door, and I'd open it, oh, so gently. When I'd made an opening sufficient enough for my head, then I put in a dark lantern, closed so that no light shone through. Then I thrust in my head. Would a madman have been so wise as this? It took me a whole hour to get my head so far in the room that I could see the old man as he lay upon the bed. Then I opened the lantern. Cautiously, while the hinges creaked. I opened it just so much that a single thin ray of light, like the thread of a spider, shot out and fell upon the eye. This I did for 7 long nights, each night just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the deed, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. On the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. The watch's minute hand moved more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own power, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. To think there I was, opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea. Perhaps he heard me. He moved on the bed suddenly as if startled. I had my head in, and I was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening. The old man sprang up in bed, crying, "Who's there?" Presently I heard a slight groan. It was the groan of mortal terror. It was not the groan of pain or of grief. Oh no, it was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew that sound well. Many a night just at midnight, while all the rest of the world slept, it is welled up within my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echoes the terrors that distracted me. I say, I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt, and I pitied him, although I chuckled a bit hard. I knew he'd been lying awake ever since that first slight noise when he turned on the bed, trying to comfort himself. He'd been saying, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney," or "It is merely a mouse crossing the floor," or "It is just a cricket that's only one single chirp." Yes. He'd been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain, because death, in approaching his victim, had stopped with its shadow and enveloped him. And it was the unperceived presence of my head that caused him to feel, although he neither heard nor saw, but to feel the presence of my head within the room. And have I not told you, what you mistake for madness is but over acuteness of the senses? Now there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. I scarcely breathed. It grew quicker and quicker and louder and louder. I thought the heart must burst. And then a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. July 1849. Dear Pa, I received yours of the 19th on the 22nd ulto, and am truly thankful for the money you sent, notwithstanding the taunt with which it was given that men of genius ought not to apply to your aid. I write to you as to how I might pursue. I would have returned home immediately but for the words in your letter that I am not particularly anxious to see you. I am yours affectionately, Edgar A. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern, leaped into the room. He shrieked once, and once only. In an instant, I had dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. And for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. And at length, it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the mattress and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. Placed my hand on the heart, held it there for many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would bother me no more. Oh, I would give the world to embody but half the ideas afloat in my imagination. Do you recall, or did you ever read the expression of Shelley about Shakespeare? Oh, what a number of ideas must have been afloat before such an author could arise. I am young, not yet 20, and a poet, if deep worship of all beauty can make me so, and wish to be so in the common sense of the word. I'm about to write a version of poems, the greater part written before I was 15. Speaking of my poem Heaven, the editor of the Yankee says he might write a beautiful, if not a magnificent poem. First words of encouragement I ever remember to have heard. The poems to be published are Elleroff and Tamberlane, one about 300, the other about 400 lines, with some shorter pieces. Elleroff has some very good poetry and much extravagance, which I have not had a chance to throw away. I rise early, drink, eat moderately, and drink nothing but water. Regular and abundant exercise in the open air. But this is my private life, my studious life, and of course escapes the eye of the public. My desire for society comes upon me only when I have become excited by drink. Then do I go. Well, that is, then have I been in the habit of going among my friends who seldom, or in fact never, having seen me unless excited by drink, take it for granted that I'm always so. But those who really know me know better. But enough of this. The reasons that have maddened me to the point of drinking are no more, and I am done drinking forever. I'm done drinking forever. Done drinking forever. Done drinking forever. Once, upon a midnight dreary, while I nodded weak and weary, suddenly there came a tapping at my chamber door. Such a rapping at my chamber door. Surely, said I, that is some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Merely this and nothing more. Distinctly I remember it was the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I'd wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books receipts of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. I'm done drinking forever. Done drinking forever. I'm done drinking forever. March 1835. My dear Mr. Kennedy, your kind invitation to dinner today has wounded me to the quick. I cannot come, for reasons of the most humiliating nature as regard my personal appearance. You must conceive my deep mortification in making this disclosure to you, but it was necessary. If you will be my friend so far as to loan me $20, I will call on you tomorrow. If not, I must submit to my fate, and it will be impossible. Yours truly, EAP. Presently, my soul grew stronger. Hesitating then no longer, "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the truth is I was napping when so faintly you came tapping, and so gently you came rapping on my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here, I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more." September 1835. My dear Poe, I'm sorry to see you in the plight your letter suggests you in. It is strange that just when everyone has begun to praise you and fortune has begun to smile on your hitherto wretched circumstances, that you should be invaded by these villainous blue devils. Rise early, live generously, and keep cheerful acquaintances. I have no doubt you will send all these misgivings of the heart to the devil. You will do well henceforward in literature, and add to your comfort, as well as your reputation, which it gives me great pleasure to advise you is rising everywhere in popular esteem. Can't you write some farces? After the manner of the French vaudevilles, if you can, and I think you can, you may turn them to excellent account by selling them to some of the managers in New York. Deep into the darkness, peering. Long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. The darkness was unbroken. Silence gave no token. And the only word there spoken was the whispered word, Lenore. This I whispered. And and an echo murmured back the word, Lenore. Merely this and nothing more. July 1835. My dearest auntie, I am blinded by tears as I write this letter. I have no desire to live and will not. Amid sorrow and the deepest grief your letter reached, and you know well how little I am able to bear up under the pressure of grief. I have no desire to live another hour. My only hold on life has been cruelly torn away. I love Virginia, passionately, devotedly. Words cannot express the fervent devotion I feel toward my own darling, my dearest cousin. What can I say? My thoughts are consumed with the supposition that both you and she will prefer to go with Nielsen Poe. I do sincerely believe that your comforts will for the present be secured. I cannot speak as regard your peace, your happiness. You both have tender hearts, and you will always have the reflection that my agony is more than I can bear, that you have driven me to the grave. For love like mine can never be gotten over. There's no use to disguise the fact that if Virginia goes with Nielsen, I shall never behold her again. This is absolutely sure. Adieu, my dear auntie, I cannot advise you. Ask Virginia. Leave it to her. Let me have in her own hand a letter bidding me goodbye, forever, and I will die. My heart will break, but I will say no more. EAP. Kiss her for me 1,000,000 times. For Virginia, my love, my sweetest little sissy, my darling little wifey. Think well before you break the heart of your cousin Eddy. I come of a race noted for vigor of fancy and ardor of passion. Men have called me mad, but the question is not yet settled whether madness is or is not the loftiest intelligence. Whether all that is glorious, or much that is profound, does not spring from disease of thoughts, moods of the mind exalted at the expense of the general intellect. They who dream by day are cognizant of many things that escape those who dream only by night. In their great visions they kept glimpses of eternity, and thrill and awakening to find that they have been upon the verge of the great secrets. They penetrate, however rudderless or compassless, into the vast ocean of the light ineffable. And again, like the adventures of the Nubian geographer, aggresse sunt mare teneborium, quid in eo esset exploratorium. Venture into the darkness to see what it might contain. We shall say then that I am mad. I grant at least that there are two distinct conditions to my mental existence, a condition of shadow and lucid reason, rather, belonging to the first epoch of my existence, and a condition of shadow and doubt pertaining to the present and to the recollection of events that belong to the second great era of my being. Therefore, what I shall recall of the first, believe, and what I may recall of the second, give only such credit as may seem due, or doubt it altogether. Or if doubt it ye cannot, then play unto its riddle the Oedipus. She whom I loved in my youth, and of whom I now pen calmly and distinctly these remembrances, was the sole daughter of the only sister of my mother, long departed. Eleonora was the name of my cousin. We had always dwelled together beneath the tropical sun in the valley of many-colored grass. No unguided footstep ever came upon our happy vale, for it lay away up among a giant range of hills that hung beetling around and about it. No path was trodden to our vicinity, and to reach our happy home there was need of putting back with force the foliage of many thousands of forest trees, and of crushing to death the glories of many millions of fragrant flowers. Thus it was that we lived all alone, knowing nothing of the world outside the valley, I and my cousin and her mother. Hand in hand about this valley for 15 years roamed I with Eleanora before love entered within our hearts. The loveliness of Eleanora was that of a seraphim. But she was a maiden, artless and innocent as the brief life she had led among the flowers. No guile disguised the fervor of her heart, and she examined it with me as we walked together in the valley of many-colored grass. But soon, she saw the finger of death was upon her bosom. That Like the ephemeron, she had been made perfect in loveliness, only to die. But the terrors of the grave lay to her in a consideration that she revealed to me one evening at twilight. She grieved to think that having entombed her in the valley of the many-colored grass, I would quit forever its happy recesses, transferring the love that was so ardently her own to some maiden of the outer and everyday world. And then and there I threw myself hurriedly at the feet of Eleanora, and offered up a vow to herself and to heaven that I would never bind myself in marriage to any daughter of the earth, that I would in no way prove recreant to her memory or to the dear memory of the love with which she had so blessed me. She said to me, not many days later, tranquilly dying, because of what I had done for the comfort of her spirit, that she would watch over me in that spirit as when departed, and if possible, make herself visible to me in the watches of the night. But if this thing were indeed beyond the powers of the souls of paradise, that she would at least give me frequent indications of her presence. With these words upon her lips, she yielded up her innocent life, putting an end to the first epoch of my own. On February 1st, 1847, the New York Daily Tribune and the Herald ran this simple obituary. On Saturday, the 30th Alto, pulmonary consumption in the 25th year of her life, Virginia Eliza, wife of Edgar Allan Poe. But the promises of Virginia were not forgotten. For I heard the sounds of the swinging of the censers of the angels, and a sweet-smelling perfume floated ever and ever about the valley. And at lone hours of the night, when my heart beat heaviest, the winds that bathed my brow came unto me laden with soft sighs, and once only, I was wakened from slumber, like the slumber of death, by the pressing of spiritual lips upon my own. But even thus, my heart refused to be filled. I longed for the love that had once filled it to overflowing, and at length the valley pained me through its memories of Virginia, left it forever through the vanities and triumphs of the turbulent world. I found myself in a strange city where all might serve to blot from recollection the dreams I had so long dreamed in the valley of the many-colored grass, the pageantries of a stately court, the clangor of arms, the loveliness of women bewildered and intoxicated my brain. But as yet, my soul proved true to its vow, and the indications of the presence of Virginia were still felt in the lone hours of the night. But then suddenly these manifestations, they ceased, and my heart grew heavy, and the world grew dark before mine eyes. And I stood aghast at the burning temptations, at the horrible thoughts that beset me, for there came from some far, far distant land into the gay court of the king I served a maiden to whose beauty my whole soul yielded at once, at whose footstool I bowed down in the most ardent and the most abject worship of love. What, indeed, was my passion for the young girl of the valley, in comparison with the delirium and the spirit-lifting ecstasy of adoration with which I poured out my whole soul at the feet of the ethereal Ermengarde? Oh, bright was the angel Ermengarde, and as I looked down into the depths of her memorial eyes, I thought only of them and of her. I wedded. And once again, there came through my window lattice the soft sighs that had forsaken me and modeled themselves into a sweet and familiar voice saying, "Sleep in peace, for the spirit of love reigneth and ruleth, and in taking to thy passionate heart her who was Ermengarde, thou art absolved for reasons which shall be known to thee in heaven of thy vows unto Eleanora." Virginia, for the first time in 2 months, I feel entirely myself. Dreadfully sick and depressed, but still myself. I feel as though I have just awakened from some horrible dream in which all was suffering and confusion, relieved only by the constant kindness of 1 or 2 considerate friends. I really believe I have been mad, but indeed I have had abundant reason to be so. Yet mad am I not, and surely I do not dream, but tomorrow I die, and today I would unburthen my soul. From my infancy, I had been noted for the docility and humility of my disposition. My tenderness of heart was even so conspicuous as to make me the jest of my companions. I was especially fond of animals and was indulged by my parents with a great variety of domestic pets. With these I spent most of my time and was never happier than when feeding or caressing them. My peculiar of character grew with my growth and derived from it one of my principal sources of pleasure in my manhood. Something about the self-sacrificing or unselfish love of a brute that goes directly to the heart of him who has had frequent occasion to test the paltry friendship, gossip, or fidelity of mere man. I married early and was pleased to find in my wife a disposition not uncongenial to my own. Observing my partiality for domestic pets, she lost no opportunity of procuring those of the most agreeable kind. We had goldfish, birds, fine dog, rabbits, a small monkey, and a cat. This latter was remarkably large and black, beautiful, sagacious to an astonishing degree. Speaking of his intelligence, my wife, who was not a little tinctured of superstition at heart, made frequent allusion to the ancient popular notion that regarded all black cats as witches in disguise. Not that she was ever serious upon this point, and I mention it all for no other reason than it happens just now to be remembered. Pluto, this was the cat's name, Pluto was my favorite pet and playmate. I alone fed him, and he attended me wherever I went about the house. It was even with great difficulty that I could prevent him from following me through the streets. Our friendship lasted in this manner for several years, during which my general temperament and character had, through the instrumentality of the fiend intemperance, experienced, I blush to confess it, a radical alteration for the worse. I grew day by day more moody, more irritable, more regardless of the feelings of others. Suffered myself to use intemperate language to my wife. At length I even offered her personal violence. My pets, of course, were made to feel the change in my disposition. A disease is like alcohol. One night, returning home much intoxicated from one of my haunts about town, I fancied the cat avoided my presence. I seized him when, in his fright at my violence, he inflicted a slight wound upon my hand with his teeth. The fury of a demon instantly possessed me. I knew myself no longer. My original soul seemed at length to take flight from my body. Fiendish, malevolent, gin nurture thrilled every fibre of my frame. I took from my waistcoat pocket a penknife, opened it, grabbed the poor beast by the throat, and deliberately cut one of its eyes from its socket. Oh, I shudder, I burn, I blush when I think upon the damnable atrocity. When reason returned the next morning and I slept off the fumes of the night's debauch, I experienced a sentiment half of horror, half of remorse for the crime of which I had been guilty, but it was at best a feeble and equivocal feeling, and my soul remained untouched. I again plunged into excess and drowned in wine all memory of the former deed. The cat slowly recovered. It is true, the loss of the eye presented a frightful appearance, but he appeared to suffer no pain. He went about the house as usual, but, as might be expected, fled in extreme terror at my approach. I was first so grieved by the part of an evident dislike on the part of a creature that had once so loved me, but then this grievance gave way to irritation, and then, as if to my final and irrevocable overthrow, the spirit of perverseness. Of this spirit, philosophy takes no account. Yet, I am not more sure that my soul lives than I am that perverseness is one of the primitive impulses or the primary faculties of the human heart, one of the indivisible primary directions that give direction to the character of man. Who has not 100 times found himself committing a vile or a silly act because he knows he should not? It was this unfathomable longing of the soul to vex itself, to commit violence to its own nature, to do wrong for the wrong's sake that caused me to continue and then to consummate the injury I had inflicted upon the unoffending brute. One morning, cool blood, I slipped a noose around the animal's neck, hung it to the limb of a tree, unearthed deepest remorse, tears streaming from my eyes, Hung it because I knew that it had loved me, because I felt it had given me no offense. Hung it because I knew that in so doing I was committing a deadly sin. A sin that would so jeopardize my immortal soul, as if to place it, if such a thing were possible, beyond the infinite mercy of the most merciful and most terrible God. On the night of the day on which this cruel deed was done, I was aroused from sleep by the cry of fire. The curtains in my bed were in flames. The whole house was blazing. It was with great difficulty that my wife and myself made our escape from the conflagration. The destruction was complete, and my entirely worldly wealth was swallowed up. I resigned myself thenceforward to despair. On the day succeeding the fire, I visited the ruins. The walls, with one exception, had fallen in. This exception was a compartment wall, not very thick, in which had been in the middle of the house and against which had rested the head of my bed. Plaster had here resisted the action of the fire, a fact which I attributed to its having recently been spread. About this wall, a dense crowd had collected, and many persons were examining a particular portion of it with every minute and eager attention. I approached and saw, as if graven in bas relief upon the surface, the figure of a gigantic cat. The impression was given with an accuracy truly marvelous. There was a rope about the animal's neck. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. Surely, said I, surely that is something in my window lattice. Let me see what thereat is and this mystery explore. Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least abeyance made he, not a moment stopped or stayed he, but with mane of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Quoth the raven, nevermore. The raven has had a great run, but I wrote it for the express purpose of running, just as I did the gold bug. Bird beat the bug, though, all hallowed. With the raven, I had become at once the most talked about man of letters in America. I became an assistant editor of the Broadway Journal. In July, I became the sole editor. And within just 10 months of its founding, I became the sole owner when I purchased the journal with $50 borrowed from Horace Greeley, the editor of the New York Daily Tribune. I realized an ambition that I had cherished for more than a decade, to edit a paper of my own. I continued to publish many versions of my works, The Mask of the Red Death, The Oval Portrait. I continued my role as literary critic, including accusations of plagiarism against Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. I used the Broadway Journal for a very public flirtation with the poet Francis Sargent Osgood. To F, thou wouldst be loved, then let thy heart from its present pathway part not, being everything which now thou art, be nothing which thou art not. I am now and again stirred up to excel a fool, merely because I hate a fool to imagine he may excel me. Beyond this, I feel nothing of ambition. I really perceive the vanity about which most men merely prate, the vanity of the human and temporal life. I presume everyone has heard of me. I am the Senora Psyche Zenobia. Nobody but my enemies ever calls me Suki Snobs. I've been assured that Suki is but a vulgar corruption of Psyche, which is good Greek and means the soul. That's me, I'm all soul. Sometimes a butterfly, which latter meaning undoubtedly alludes to my appearance in my new crimson satin dress, with a sky blue Arabian mantelet and the trimmings of green agraffas and the 7 flounces of orange-colored auriculas. As for Snobs, anybody who should look at me would be instantly aware that my name wasn't Snobs. This Tabitha Turnip propagated that report out of sheer envy. Tabitha Turnip, little wretch. But what can we expect out of a turnip? Wonder if she remembers the old adage about blood out of a turnip. Memo, put her in mind of it the first opportunity. Memo again, pull her nose. I have been assured that Snobs is but a corruption of Zenobia, and that Zenobia is a queen, and that Zenobia, like Psyche, is but Greek, and that my father was a Greek, and consequently I have a right to our patronymic, which is Zenobia, and not by any means Snobs. My name is the Signora Psyche Zenobia, so justly celebrated as the corresponding secretary to the Philadelphia Regular Exchange, Teetotal, Young Bell's Letters, Universal Experimental Bibliographical Association to Civilize Humanity. Dr. Moneypenny gave us that title, and he said we chose it because it sounded big, like an empty rum punching. My dear madam, said he, evidently struck by my appearance, for I had on my new crimson satin with the trimmings of agraffas and the orange-colored auriculas. My dear madam, if you wish to write forcibly, Miss Zenobia, pay particular attention to your sensations. Your sensations are the greatest things after all. If you ever find yourself hanged or drowned, note your sensations. They will be worth to you 10 guineas a sheet. I assured him I had an excellent pair of garters and would go out and hang myself forthwith. With this intention, I spent the greater part of the day wandering through the city of Edinburgh, searching for desperate adventures, adventures adequate to the intensity of my feelings and well adapted to the character of the article I intended to write. On my walk through the city, I had two humble but faithful companions, Diana, my poodle, sweetest of creatures, and Pompey, my negro, sweet Pompey. I had taken the arm of the gallant Pompey, and I had attended at a respectable distance by Diana, walked through the pleasant and very populous streets of the now deserted Edina. On a sudden, there presented itself to view a church, a Gothic cathedral, vast, venerable, and with a tall steeple that towered into the sky. I was seized with an uncontrollable desire to ascend the Guinea pinnacle and observe the immense extent of the city. The door of the cathedral stood invitingly open, and so we ascended. Upon surmounting the staircase, I discovered that the sole light admitted to the gloomy chamber at its top was from an opening about a foot in diameter and 7 feet from the floor. You perceive that aperture, Pompey? I wish to look through it. You will stand here. So. Now, put out your hand, and I will put my foot upon it, thus. Now the other hand, and I will get upon your shoulders. He did everything I asked, and I found upon getting up that, I could easily pass my head and neck through the aperture. I discovered that the hole through which I had thrust my head was an opening in the dial plate of a gigantic clock. I discovered also, with immense surprise, the size of its hands, the longest of which could not have been less than 10 feet in length and were broadest 8 or 9 inches in diameter. They were made of steel, apparently, and they appeared to be sharp. After some moments, I was aroused by the voice of Pompey, who said that he could stand it no longer and requested that I would be so kind as to come down. Well, this was unreasonable, and I told him so in a speech of some length. He replied, but with an evident misunderstanding of my ideas upon the subject. Accordingly, I grew angry and told him in plain words that he was a fool, that he committed an ignoramus sent clenchi, that his notions were mere insomnibus, and his ideas little better than an enemy wary borum. He appeared satisfied, and I resumed my contemplations. It might have been half an hour after this altercation, as I was deeply absorbed in the scenery beneath me, that I was aroused again by the pressing of something cool, which was pressed with a gentle pressure against the back of my neck. I was inexpressibly alarmed. What could it be? I knew that Pompey was beneath my feet, and that Diana was sitting, according to my explicit instructions, on her hind legs in the far corner of the room. What, indeed, could it be? I turned my head gently to one side and perceived, to my extreme horror, that the huge, glittering, scimitar-like minute hand of the clock had, in the course of its hourly revolution, descended upon my neck. Well, there was not a second to be lost. I endeavored to pull back at once, but it was too late. There was no way of forcing my head through the mouth of that terrible trap in which it was so fairly caught, and which grew narrower and narrower with a rapidity too horrible to be conceived. I had tried to push up the ponderous iron bar, but I might as well have tried to lift the cathedral itself. I screamed to Pompey, but Heo said that I had hurt his feelings by calling him an ignorant old squint-eye. I called to Diana, but she only said, woof, and that I told her on no account to store from the corner. Thus I had no help to be expected from my associates. Meantime, the ponderous and terrific sight of time, oh, I now discovered the literal import of that phrase, had not stopped, nor was it likely to stop in the course of its revolution. The bar had buried itself an inch in my neck, and my sensations grew indistinct and confused. Soon, the ticking of the machinery amused me, I say, and the trifle circumstances afforded me pleasure. The eternal click, clack, of the clock was the most melodious of music to my ears. Oh, and then there were the giant figures on the dial plate of the clock. How intellectual, how intelligent they all looked. Presently they took to dancing the mazurka. I think it was the figure 5 who performed most to my satisfaction. She was evidently a lady of breeding. Oh, she did the pirouette to admiration, whirling around upon her apex. I endeavored to hand her a chair, for she appeared fatigued with her exertions. Oh, and it was not until then that I received my lamentable situation. Lamentable indeed. The bar had buried itself 2 inches in my neck. Oh, and I was aroused to a sense of exquisite pain. Oh, and now a new horror presented itself, and one sufficient to startle even the strongest of nerves. My eyes, from the cruel pressure of the machinery, were absolutely starting from their sockets. Just as I was imagining how I should possibly manage without them, one actually tumbled out of my head and, rolling down the steep side of the gutter, the steeple lodged in the gutter that ran just along the eaves of the main building. Well, the loss of the eye was not so much as the insolent air of independence and contempt it regarded me with after it was out. There it lay in the gutter, just under my nose, and the airs it gave itself would have been disgusting had they not been ridiculous. Such a winking and a blinking never before was seen. Well, the behavior on the part of the eye in the gutter was not only irritating on account of its manifest insolence and shameful ingratitude, but was also inconvenient on account of the sympathy which always exists between 2 eyes of the same head. However far apart, I was forced in a manner to wink and blink whether I would or not with the scoundrelly thing that lay just under my nose. Presently, I was relieved by the dropping out of the other eye. It rolled down the steep side of the steeple, the same as its fellow, possibly a concerted plot. Both rolled out of the gutter, and in truth I was glad to get rid of them. Oh, my sensations were now of entire happiness. The bar had buried itself 4.5 inches deep in my neck, and there was only a little bit of skin to cut through. The sensations of happiness were because I knew that in a few seconds at farthest I would be relieved from my disagreeable situation. And in this expectation I was not at all disappointed. At 5:25 in the afternoon, the terrible revolution of the minute hand had proceeded sufficiently far to sever the remainder of my neck. Wow. I was not at all disappointed to see the head, which had occasioned me so much embarrassment, make a final separation from my body. It rolled down the steep side of the steeple, lodged in the gutter, and then, with a plunge, made its way into the middle of the street. I will candidly confess, my sensations were now of the most mysterious, nay, of the most perplexing and incomprehensible. My sensations were now here and there at one and the same time. At one moment I felt that I, the head, was the true Signora Psyche Zenobia. At the next moment I felt that myself, the body, was the true identity. My head presently made me a speech which I could indistinctly hear without ears. I gathered enough to know that it was astonished at my wishing to remain alive under such circumstances. Well, there was nothing now to prevent myself from my getting down, and I did so. What it was that Pompey saw so very unusual in my appearance, I've never been able to figure out. The fellow opened his mouth from ear to ear and shut his eyes as if he were endeavoring to crack nuts between the lids. Finally, the scoundrel made one leap for the staircase and disappeared. I hurled insults after him, and then turned to the darling of my life, the shaggy-haired Diana. Oh, God, is that a rat I see skulking into its hole? Are these the bones of my beloved puppy, which has been so cruelly devoured by the monster? And is that the departed shade, the ghost, the spirit of my beloved puppy which sits with a grace so melancholy? Oh, hearken, for she speaks. And if I died, at least I died for thee, for thee. Oh, are not her words too true? Sweet creature, she too has sacrificed herself in my behalf. Dogless, pompyless, headless, what now remains for the unhappy Signora Psyche Zenobia? Alas, nothing. I am done. Oh. November 1842. My dear Hamilton, I see you have my landscape garden in your last number. But oh Jupiter, the typographical blunders! Have you been sick, or what is the matter? I wrote to you sometime since, saying that if upon perusal of the mystery of Marie Roget you find anything not precisely suited to your pages, I would gladly repurchase it. But, should you conclude to retain them, for God's sake contrive to send me the proofs, or at least read them yourself. Such errors as occur in the landscape garden would absolutely ruin a tale such as Marie Roget. I am as straight as judges, indeed somewhat more straight than some of our Philadelphia dignitaries. And what is more so, I intend to stay so. Do write immediately, yours truly, E.A. Poe. You ask me why men so misjudge me, why I have enemies. Well, if your knowledge of my character and my career does not supply you an answer, it does not become me to give you one. Suffice it to say that I have had the audacity to remain poor so that I might preserve my independence, that nevertheless in some regards and to some extents I have been successful in letters, that I have been a critic and an unscrupulously honest and in some cases a bitter one, that I have attacked uniformly where I attacked at all those in positions of power and influence, and that whether in literature or society, I have seldom refrained, whether directly or indirectly, from expressing the pretensions with which arrogance and imbecility inspire in me. And you, who know all this, you ask me why I have enemies? Has it never occurred to you that you do not live among my friends? On the part of one or two individuals who are much embittered against me, there is a deliberate attempt to bring ruin to me by destroying the Broadway Journal. In this emergency, without the leisure to know whether I act improperly, I venture to appeal to you. The sum I need is $100. If you will loan me for 3 months any portion, I will not be ungrateful. Unexpected engagements demanding my whole attention. So far as regards myself and for which the Broadway Journal was established, I now, as its editor, bid farewell, as cordially to foes as to friends. Regrettably, the Broadway Journal ended officially with a final issue dated January 3, 1846. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil. By that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within a distant maiden Aiden it shall clasp a rare, a sainted maiden, clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird, fiend. I shrieked, upstarting, get thee back into the tempest on the night's plutonium shore. Leave no black plume of that lie thy soul has spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. July 1849. My dearest auntie, I am so sick. I've had the cholera or spasms just as bad. I can hardly hold the pen. The instant you get this, come to me. The joy of seeing you will almost compensate for our sorrows. We can but die together. It is no use to reason with me now that I've finished Eureka. I can accomplish nothing more. You have been all in all to me, darling, ever beloved mother. truest, dearest friend. I was never really insane, except when my heart was touched. I have been taken to prison once since I came here for sprang drink, but then I was not. It was about Virginia. Virginia wrote this valentine for me. Ever with thee I wish to roam. Dearest, my heart is thine. Give me a cottage for my home and a ripe old cypress vine, removed from the world with its sin and its care and the tattling of many tongues. Love alone shall guide us when we are there. Love shall heal my weakened lungs. And oh, the tranquil hours we'll spend, never wishing that others may see how perfect ease we'll think to lend ourselves to the world and its glee. Ever peaceful and blissful will be. At each extension of the disorder, I loved her more dearly, clung to her life with a desperate pertinacity. I'm constitutionally sensitive, nervous to an unusual degree. I became insane with horrible intervals of sanity. I am calm and tranquil, and but for a shadow of coming evil, I should be happy. What can this mean? I stand amid the roar of the surf-tormented shore, and hold within my hand grains of the golden sand. How few, yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep. How I weep, how I weep. Oh God, can I not grasp them with a tighter clasp? Oh God, can I not save one from the pitiless wave? Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream? Listen to me, said the demon as he placed his hand upon my head. The region of which I speak is a dreary region in Libya, by the borders of the rivers I hear. There is neither quiet nor silence. The waters of the river have a saffron and sickly hue, and flow not onward to the sea, but palpitate forever and ever beneath the red eye of the sun with a convulsive and tumultuous motion. For many miles on the river's oozy bed lies a pale desert of gigantic water lilies. They sigh one to the other in their solemnity, and stretch towards the heaven their long and ghastly necks, and nod to and fro their everlasting heads. There is a murmur that cometh out from among them, like the murmur of subterranean water, and they sigh one to the other. But there is a border to their realm, the border of the dark, horrible, lofty forest. There, like the waves about the Hebrides, the underwood is continually agitated, but there is no wind throughout the head. And the tall, primeval trees rock eternally hither and thither with a crashing and mighty sound, and from their summits drop one by one everlasting dews, and at their roots lie strange, poisonous flowers writhing in perturbed slumber. And overhead, with a rustling and loud noise, the clouds rush westwardly until they roll, a cataract over the fiery wall of the horizon. But there is no wind throughout the heaven, and by the borders of the rivers I hear, there is neither quiet nor silence. It was night and the rain fell. Falling it was rain, and having fallen it was blood. And I stood among the morass of the water lilies, and the rain fell upon my head, and the lilies sighed one into the other in the solemnity of their desolation. And all at once, the thin, ghastly, the moon rose through the ghastly mist, and was crimson in color, and mine eyes fell upon a rock which stood by the shore of the river, and the rock was grey and ghastly and tall, and the rock was grey. And upon the front of the rock were characters engraven in the stone. And I moved forward through the morass till I came under the shore, that I might read the characters, but I could not decipher them. And I was going back into the morass when the moon shone with a full red, and I looked upon the rock and upon the characters, and the characters were desolation. And I looked upward, and upon the summit of the rock stood a man, and I hid myself among the water lilies that I might observe the actions of the man. And the man was tall and stately in form, and was wrapped from his shoulders to his feet in the toga of old Rome. And his figures was indistinct, but his features were the features of a deity. For the mantle of the night, and of the mist, and of the moon, and of the dew had left uncovered the features of his face. And I read in them the fables of weariness and sorrow and disgust with mankind, and a longing after solitude. And the man sat upon the rock, leaned his head in his hand, and looked out upon the desolation. And then I cursed the elements with a curse of tumult, and a tempest gathered in the heaven before there had been no wind, and the heaven became livid with the violence of the tempest, and the rains beat upon the head of the man, and the floods of the river came down, and the river was tormented in a foam, and the lilies shrieked within their beds, and the thunder rolled, and the lightning fell, and the forest crumbled, and the man sat upon the rock and watched. The night waned, and he sat, and then I grew angry and cursed with a curse of silence! The heaven, and the wind, and the river, and the lilies, and they became accursed and were still. And the moon ceased to totter up its pathway to heaven, and the lilies sighed no more, and the clouds hung motionless, and the waters sunk to their level, and the lilies made no sound, nor the murmur heard from among them, nor was there any shadow of sound throughout the vast, illimitable desert. And I looked upon the rock, and upon the characters, and they were changed. The characters were silence. And hurriedly, the man stood forth upon the rock, and listened. There was no shadow of sound throughout the vast, illimitable desert. And the man turned his face away in haste, and fled afar off, so that I beheld him no more. As Allah liveth, that tale the demon told me as he sat by my side in the shadow of the tomb, I hold to be the most wonderful of all. And as the demon made an end of his story and fell back within the cavity of the tomb, he laughed. I could not laugh with the demon, and he cursed me because I could not laugh. I was found on Wednesday, the 7th of October, 1849, wandering the streets of Baltimore, delirious, wearing clothes that were not my own. I was in need of immediate assistance. A kind gentleman took me to Washington Medical College Hospital. I was never coherent long enough to explain how I came to be in this dire situation. I was a dreamer, dwelling in ideal realms in heaven and hell, peopled with accidents and the creatures of my brain. I wandered the streets in madness or melancholy, with lips moving in indistinct curses, or with eyes upturned in passionate prayer, never for myself, for I felt that I was already damned. With eyes introverted to a heart gnawed with anguish, I would brave the wildest storms with garments drenched, beating my arms wildly at the winds and the rains, and my lips moving to invoke those spirits as could only be invoked by me from that Eden where were those I loved. That Eden that I might never see, but in fitful glimpses as it opened its gates to receive the less fiery and happy natures to whose destiny to death did not involve the doom of sin. Mother, Mother! Mother! May God protect you until I clasp you at my heart. Pa? Will you write one word to me? Virginia. Our love was far greater than those who were older than we, those far wiser than we. And neither the angels up in the heaven nor the demons down under the sea could ever dissever my soul from the soul of the beautiful Annabel Lee. Avaunt! Avaunt! From fiends to friends, the indignant ghost is riven. From hell unto a high estate far up within heaven. From grief and moan to a gold throne next to the King of heaven. Let no bell toll, then lest her soul amid its hallowed mirth. I hear the sledges with the bells, silver bells. Oh, what a world of merriment their melody foretells. How they tinkle, tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night as the stars that oversprinkle seem to sprinkle all the heavens with a crystalline delight, keeping time, a sort of runic rhyme to the tintinnabulation that so musically wells from the bells, 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 bells. Thank heaven, the crisis, the danger is over at last. This lingering illness is conquered at last. And this fever called living is over at last. It's all over now. Right. Eddy is no more. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. His eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws its shadow on the floor. And my soul, from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor, shall be lifted nevermore. Lord, help my poor soul.